with you. Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obi Uchendu. Thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to kick off the show today talking about something that was quite heartwarming for a lot of Nigerians this week. The Twitter ban was officially lifted, or suspension, like the government called it, after 222 days being inaccessible by Nigerians. A lot of people, of course, were able to circumvent the suspension using the popular VPN to access social media, but it's back on now, and a lot of people have a lot of permutations as to why this has happened. You know, I did say last week that political season is fully upon us. The campaigns are already starting to warm up and kick into full gear. This past week alone, we had about 3 or so Nigerians or politicians who have come out to say that they'll be running for president. So people are wondering, is there a correlation with, the APC in government trying to use this to pacify Nigerians as a way to, kick off the campaign season? But hey, who knows? The best part of it is that at least we are back on a platform that's more than just lets us have free speech, also promotes business for a lot of young Nigerians. We're going to be talking about this Twitter ban and all the gains and losses that have come with it, if any at all. And we're joined now by Adewale Adetona, who's a digital technologist. Thanks a lot for joining us, Adewale.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Very well, thank you. So, I mean, there's a lot that has been said in the last 7 months, about what this means for Nigerians. There's also a lot of concerns as to what sort of precedent it has set going forward with regards to the sort of power that government has over free speech, especially in an age of technology. But more importantly, I just want to get what are your thoughts on how this played out and, what it has done for the young Nigerian or for Nigerians as a whole with regards to confidence in government and, of course, with the booming tech space as well?
Yeah, thank you, Ebuka. Yeah, so let's start with the Twitter ban itself, why it shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? Because I feel for government, especially Nigerian government, we should always find a way to change our approach towards media, not just media, especially social media, right? I think government needs to join and to stakeholders, right? Users and owners of the platform to form meaningful policies, right? Not just banning or canceling at first, then dialoguing later. I mean, our government shouldn't be like a carpenter whose solution to every problem is hammer, right? So, I mean, looking at the economic implication of the Twitter ban on the Nigerian economy is something to reflect upon, right? And then it's something that is really, I mean, quite very sad, right? According to NetBlock's cost of shutdown tool, which was reported by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Friday, the Nigerian economy lost over 10 trillion naira, that's about $26 billion, to 7-month suspension of Twitter, right? I mean, for a poor nation like Nigeria, our government should be seeking every means to grow our economy, right? I mean, especially digital economy in this tech dispensation, and not just stifle the economy.
All right, I hear you, but there's a lot of, I mean, the government's put out the very solid point about the fact that all their demands to Twitter as an organization were met. And, I mean, a lot of people would see that as a gain of some sort, opening an office in Abuja, paying tax in a country that needs as much revenue as it can get. Aren't points like that supposed to be a valid reason to say, okay, at least something good came out of this?
Ebuka, you and I know that, I don't know, I really don't believe all those things were met by Twitter, right? I mean, to some certain extent, Twitter might have, right, agreed to some of those pointers, right? But I wouldn't believe Twitter would fully agree to most of those terms raised by Nigerian government, right? And if there are other better ways for Nigerian government to have treated this would have been to get involved, I mean, in policy making, right? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. I think our government should just sort of find a way to let them localize their policies, right, to conform with the communities in which they operate. let's have local representatives in the conversation monitoring and compliance space, right, on these platforms, right? We should look at it from the point of view of how many Nigerians are on the Twitter team moderating comments and conversations on the platform. Those are the kind of conversations we should be having. We should start having people, right, having people in those communities, in those platforms that would then help us start to monitor conversations. Because at the end of the day, right, looking at it from the Nigerian government perspective, I mean, it's a thing of concern, right, especially when people have the freedom of putting out whatever information, sometimes fake news and all of that, right? The government has our interest at heart, right, by trying to protect the kind of conversations that happen on that space. But if the government change their idea, I mean, their approach by then looking at localizing policies on these platforms, I think it will go a long way, right, by, I mean, helping the government and any other person, I mean, meet their objectives.
All right, I'll come back to you, Diwali, but we're joined also by Yunibe Effiong, who's a human rights lawyer, and I want to get your perspective on it. Thanks a lot for joining us. I just want to, because the human rights conversation has come up a lot with regards to free speech with what happened with Twitter. But on the side of government, they said, well, there's multiple platforms for people, Nigerians, to express themselves. Of course, there's Facebook and Instagram, which are two other popular ones. Go there while we try to sort this out. I mean, as much as we Nigerians have a right to free speech on whatever platform, the government also feels the need to, for when national security is threatened, like they said, especially with this term fake news now that has become very popular. Don't they have a case with that?
Thank you, Bukai. It's my pleasure to join you. Now, I think we have to be honest with ourselves as the people. There was no reason for the ban or the suspension in the first place. The argument canvassed by the Nigerian government is not tenable. If you look at the demands that they made, as I speak to you, you can prove me otherwise. Twitter does not have an office in Nigeria. Twitter is, to my mind, to my knowledge, is not registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. Twitter, as I speak to you, to the best of my knowledge, has not paid a kobo to the Nigerian Treasury as tax. What that shows you is that the basis for which this ban was imposed was actuated in bad faith. It was not done in good faith. Because if the argument was that except these demands are met, that these demands were preconditions, and that Twitter was existing illegally in the country as they claim, how come that you have now suspended the ban and those conditions have not been met? And you have said correctly that other platforms are existing, but that is exactly why there shouldn't have been a ban in the first place. Because Facebook, as I'm aware, you can again prove me wrong, I don't know where their office is in Nigeria. I don't know where TikTok has an office in Nigeria. I don't know where WhatsApp has an office in Nigeria. I don't know where Instagram has an office in Nigeria. These are distinct social media platforms. Why was Twitter singled out? The reason is clear. President Buhari put out a tweet that was contentious, that was controversial, that many of us found scandalous and unacceptable. That tweet was reported and the tweet was taken down. So this was, as far as I'm concerned, about massaging the ego of the government. It had nothing to do with regulation. It had nothing to do with Twitter having an office in Nigeria. But guess what? Within the period that this ban was in place, Nigeria was a loser in terms of revenue, in terms of job creation, in terms of widening the cyberspace. This is a government that came in promising change, a government that came into power through protests, and now the civic space is shrinking. So there was no basis for this ban. This shouldn't have been tolerated. And now they have swallowed their pride, they have eaten their vomit, by now going back from where they started from. They are now talking about things that Twitter has promised to do. Ebuka, all those things are things that any responsible government could have invited Twitter and had a robust and fruitful conversation with them and negotiated with them in good faith. None of this was done. They just woke up one day and said, oh, the president is not feeling too excited today. Let us close down Twitter. Why would you put down the Twitter account of the president? Now look at it. All federal government agencies are beginning to tweet, but they claim Twitter was existing illegally because it was not incorporated. So if that argument is correct, does it mean that the federal government of Nigeria and its agencies are now abating criminality by now starting to tweet, despite that Twitter is not registered? we must be honest with ourselves as a country, and we must never accept a country where the government can wake up one day and say Twitter should not exist, Facebook should not exist, without any law empowering them to do so. So for me, that action remains an act against the people of Nigeria. It was never in the national interest, and the outcome can never be in the national interest. Whatever Twitter does subsequently, as I've said, I think that could have been done without this bravado, without this needless show of brute power. All this could have been avoided. What has happened? The international community is now seeing Nigeria as a country that does not take freedom of speech seriously. We are now being taken back to the years of military dictatorship, where a regime can wake up in the day and shut down media houses. That wasn't necessary. All this drama could have been avoided. It could have been avoided. And because the election is close, they are now coming back to tell Nigerians to use the same Twitter to advertise what they claim are achievements of the government, which I haven't even seen any.
I hear you, but at the same time, I mean, Nigeria is not the first country, many people will say, that has tried to have this sort of arrangement, for want of a better word, with Twitter. India keeps getting cited, and all over the world, there's concerns about how to sort of regulate, platforms where news or information, gets disseminated. But on the flip side, how do you think this impacts on, going forward in a country like this, like you say, where, the civic space continues to shrink? Is this a precedent that you think will not hold water going forward, or you think this is probably the start of, for one thing, I don't want to be sad about it, but do you think there's many more of this to come, since this has happened?
For me, I don't know why people were surprised that this happened, because if you look at the antecedents of the current government, since the president came to power in 2015, media houses have been attacked, journalists have been arrested, citizens have been arrested all over the country on account of what they post on social media. The right to protest has been denied Nigerians. Nobody is allowed to protest freely again. The civic space has been shrinking consistently. So when you now have a government waking up in the morning and say, we are shutting down a platform as Twitter that offers millions of young people, millions of Nigerians, not only an opportunity, not only a platform to aid their views, their grievances, but also to earn a living. We are talking about thousands of young people who are embracing technology, who are embracing the digital economy, that are using this platform to advertise, to do business and exist. And you now wake up and say you are shutting down that kind of platform. That is a dangerous precedent. What that tells you is that we can wake up tomorrow and have a president who will say, I'm closing down all TV stations in the country. That is why this has to be thoroughly condemned.
All right, I'll come back to you in a bit, but let me go back to Adewale now, and I want to talk, tech, because tech is one of those spaces that's booming heavily. I mean, we see the news every day of, of VCs just, continue to throw money into that space because they can see how viable it is. What sort of an impact did this suspension or ban have on the IT space, especially in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you, Ebuka. Yeah, so the digital platforms like Twitter have become a viable tool for business operations, right, and even government in engaging with its populace, right. We can't deny the fact that digital tech sector is one of the growth drivers of the economy, right. We've seen this with, there was a report late last year that showed how much tech companies, especially in Africa, raised in terms of venture capital money, and Nigeria tops the list of that, or tops that list. So the damages that's been done, we've witnessed how the ban have affected corporate Nigeria, how banks and fintechs cannot even come to Twitter to address concerns of their customers, right? We witnessed how SMEs, that small business owners, couldn't even use Twitter as they used to before to promote their businesses. We've also witnessed how social media influencers and digital marketers, right, were not able to then help brands meet their marketing objectives. We witnessed how all these guys became sidelined. They couldn't even get jobs from all of these brands, right? Even government organizations themselves, like WHO and NCDC, that used to come to Twitter to give regular updates, couldn't even use the platform, right? So if our government needs to then need to look at how to do things right, especially in this tech economy, we need to find ways, like I said previously, we need to find ways to then help entrepreneurs and individuals to help them, right, to use tech platforms like Twitter, right, to help them achieve their goals, right, and also empower people to not just build their platforms, but also help Nigerian government solve the issue of unemployment.
Okay. Very quickly now, as quickly as you can, please. One of the agreements that the federal government said they reached with Twitter was, it said it's going to enroll Nigeria in its portal for direct communications between government officials on Twitter to manage prohibited content that violates the Twitter community guidelines. There's a lot of concern about that particular one, saying that if government is not happy with a tweet, they can as well pull it down or block the person's account or something. Is that a fear that people should hold?
Yeah, so I read that, right? But the way the headline was couched, right, made it look like it's something very peculiar, or it's something very unique that the government has achieved. This is something that has been existing even in the UK and US, right? For whatever reason, especially when it comes to government governance and then investigation, security, and all of that, right? They have the right to write to these platforms to demand certain things, right? And it doesn't mean the government have the right to then write them and say, oh yeah, remove this tweet, remove this person's content. No, there has to be certain precedent. There has to be certain things that needed and that needs to be shown by the person who is writing this claim to show that this tweet violates the policies of Twitter for them to then take action on it.
All right. Let me go back to Nebehi now. And like you have said, a lot of people have, tied this entire thing to the elections. Of course, remember very clearly that in 2015, the APC government rode the wave of social media, especially Twitter, into government. You think we're back there now? And you think this is going to be the story of 2022?
Well, the APC in their statement in response to the lifting of the unnecessary ban has called on Nigerians and their supporters to use Twitter to advertise the achievements of the government. But Ebuka, you cannot market a product that is not marketable. So I'm wondering what achievements they are going to present to Nigerians going to the next election. How Twitter is going to assist them. How they will use Twitter to advertise. They can only advertise. Look at the economy, Ebuka. Look at security. Look at job creation. Look at the value of the naira. Nothing. Look at the healthcare sector. In the last 6 years, the president is still going to UK to treat himself. He has not been able to build a single hospital. Members of his party, they are still flying abroad. So Twitter is going to afford Nigerians the opportunity to expose the unprecedented failure of this government in terms of education, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of job creation. All the promises that the government made in 2015, they have failed. Corruption has only skyrocketed. What have they achieved? So if this is about 2023, the tragedy for APC, the bad news for APC, is that Nigerians will only use that platform to continue to expose their failure. I cannot see any achievement that is worth advertising on Twitter as far as this government is concerned. You can point at just one thing that we can say the president has achieved. Just one institution that has been reformed in the last 6 years. Is it the police? Is it the military? Which institution? It has been tragedy upon tragedy. So when they are making these comments about telling Nigerians that they should use Twitter to show what the president has achieved, it has been in the negative. So as far as I'm concerned, this is an opportunity for Nigerians to continue to expose the failure of the Buhari regime. It's as simple as that. Thank
you very much, Inebehe Fiong, and of course, Adewale Adetona, for your contributions. 222 days was 222 days too long for a lot of Nigerians, but we're glad that we're here now. Thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to take a break now and be right back. Please don't go.